Dear students, welcome aboard the English cruise. This is Neelima ma'am. Today we will take a journey through the story The Fun They Had from the book Beehive. The author of the story is Isaac Asimov, who was an American writer and professor of biochemistry at Boston University. He was known for his works of science fiction and popular science. The story writer envisions what the schools and education system will be like in the 23rd century. The setting of the story is in the future, when books and schools as we know them now will perhaps not exist. How will the children study then? This diagram is going to tell us about that. Shall we just study it? You can see that both these students are studying through the computers. This girl is sitting in a virtual classroom. Now, what is the meaning of virtual? Not physically existing as such, but made by software to appear to do so. So you can see this is all a setup. She is thinking that she is in a school, but she is not. For example, you play the video games. You are not in a playground, but in a room. So that is all a virtual setting. Then we see the robotic teachers, which are pre-programmed to teach us certain subjects and certain topics. So they will be there. There will be the moving e-text on our screens. For example, I am moving this text. It's rolling up. So that's how the schools of the future will be like. Okay? So this is the description of the future schools. Let us go through the story. Margie even wrote about it that night in her diary. On the page headed 17 May 2157 years, she wrote, "Today, Tommy found a real book." Now, as I already told you, that this is a futuristic story set in 2157 AD. So since this is 2020, and it's going to be around 137 years from now, Tommy found a real book. Now, what is a real book? The real book, according to them, was on paper and printed letters. They knew only the e-books or the telebooks, as education was completely computerized during that time when these children will be there. It was a very old book that Tommy found. Margie's grandfather once said that when he was a little boy, his grandfather told him that there was a time when all stories were printed on paper. Now, through Margie's great-great-grandfather, that these children came to know that there was time when stories were printed on paper. They turned the pages, which were yellow and crinkly. What is the meaning of crinkly? With many folds or lines. And it was awfully funny to read words that stood still instead of moving the way they were supposed to on a screen, And then, when they turned back to the page before, it had the same words on it. And that it had when they read it the first time. Now you can see that the children are finding the book awfully funny. Why? Because the text is not moving. We know that these children are used to the telebooks, where constantly the text moves. But here they are finding that when you turn the page backwards, forwards, the words are the same. That means the words are printed on a paper. That is why they are not moving. "Gee," said Tommy, "what a waste. When you are through with the book, you just throw it away?" "I guess. Our television screen must have had a million books on it, and it's good for plenty more. I wouldn't throw it away." Now immediately Tommy compares his telebooks with this book of the olden times. Mind you, children, as they're talking about the old times, they're talking about us. They're talking about this time that we are living in, when we have got books and we have a school building. So they are wondering because they are the futuristic children. And they say, when my story is over, I'm never going to throw my television screen away. It's got millions and millions of books. It has got the capacity to do it. And so he find it utter worthlessness to have such books. Same with mine, said Margie. She was 11 and hadn't seen as many telebooks as Tommy had. He was 13. Now, even Margie, who was younger to Tommy, agrees to the fact that yes, she's also got so many telebooks. Although we know that being younger, she must have read lesser books than Tommy, but she agrees with him. She said, "Where did you find it?" "In my house," replied Tommy. He pointed without looking because he was busy reading, and he said, "In the attic." Now, he replies to her without even looking at her because he got so interested in that book, right? And he found it in the attic. Attic, what is the meaning of it? A space just below the roof, used as a storeroom. He must be looking something somewhere, trying to find out stuff, and he found this book. Then Margie asks him, "What is it about?" And he answers, "School." Margie was scornful. Now, what is being scornful? It is contemptuous, showing you think it was worthless. "What's there to write about school?" Margie says. "I hate school." Now, then we come to know here that Margie actually hates school. Let us go and find out why. Margie always hated school, but now she hated it more than ever. The mechanical teacher had been giving her test after test in geography, and she had been doing worse and worse until her mother had shaken her head sorrowfully and sent for the county inspector. Now we see that the children of the futuristic schools will have the mechanical teacher. That is what Isaac Asimov is telling us, right? And this geography section of the computer or the mechanical teacher was troubling her like anything, and she was not able to do it, attempt it. And the mother was very sorrowful and troubled. Why my daughter is not able to do it? So she sent for the county inspector. Now, a county is an administrative region of a country. Okay, a land ruled by a count or a countess. So she sent for the inspector to come and check her computer. He was a round little man with a red face and a whole box of tools and dials and wires. So he brings all his instruments with him. Let us see what dial is. It is a circular scale over which a needle moves to show a measurement, such as speed. So he brings it on. He smiled at Margie and gave her an apple, then took the teacher apart. Now, taking the teacher apart means to open up the machine to see what was wrong in it. Margie had hoped he wouldn't know how to put it together again. That was the hope of the little girl. Oh, he should not be able to put it back again. I don't want that mechanical teacher. But he knew how, all right. He knew it very well. He knew his job. And after an hour or so, there it was again, large and black and ugly, with a brick screen on which all the lessons were shown and the questions were asked. So now what happened? After an hour, the teacher was back again. The inspector had actually fixed him up. That wasn't so bad. The part Margie hated most was the slot where she had to put homework and test papers. Now, we see what is the meaning of slot. A slot is a given space, time, or position. In this particular case, we will go with a given space, right? So that was a given space where she had to put her homework and test papers, and that was the area of the teacher she would not like at all. She always had to write them out in a punch code. Now, what is a punch code? Let us find out. It is a computing language. For example, you have languages like English and Hindi and Punjabi, but she had to know this particular language. They made her learn when she was 6 years old. So at the age of 6, she had to learn another language, that was the computing language. And the mechanical teacher calculated the marks in no time. Now, what Margie had to do was to insert her homework in a particular language that the mechanical teacher would read. And her answers he will calculate and give the marks right away. He was very fast. The inspector had smiled after he was finished and patted Margie's head. He said to her mother, "It's not the little girl's fault, Mrs. Jones." Now we see Mrs. Jones is Margie's mother.